Hello and welcome to Morning Brew. I hope you can see me. Hope you can hear me. It is Wednesday the 31st of May, 2023. We are well and truly living in the future. Big shout out to all of our wonderful commentators, commenters on the chat here. I don't know why it's coming up as subscribers only, and I've got like a little thing. Can I move that on the screen? No, I can't. Right, I need to have a word with the chat window people, because that's not coming up the way that I want the chat window to come up. It just disappeared. That's no good. That's no good at all. Do you know what it is? It's because I have done something stupid and I've brought up the wrong chat window. It should be this chat window here. Sorry, you're going to have to just bear with me for a second while I do technical things. I'm not in my normal studio today. I might have to go and open a window as well because it's absolutely roasting. There we go. There's Maggie Pie there. Now you can actually read what people are saying. Phew. Goody. Right. Ooh, I'm not banned. No, Vendetta, you're not banned. Stop. Vendetta thinks he's... You're not banned, man. You're not banned. I never banned you. I don't think YouTube banned you. There's two types of comments. There's live chat and top chat. Top chat's a bit like, Top Cat, that TV show that was called Boss Cat for some reason in the UK, because there was a brand of cat food called Top Cat. Anyway, moving swiftly on, it is the 31st of May. There's a few things to talk about today. Chiefly because I like talking about Brexit. Hi, my name is Graham, and I love talking about Brexit. So today, the New Zealand and Australia trade deals kick in. G'day, mate. We're going to send some beanos over to Australia. I wish I was joking, but they are actually sending some beanos over to Australia. Can you believe that? Be greeted, good people of Narnia, says Danilo. We've also got David is definitely there in the chat. We've got One Angry Pagan. We've got Dave W. Got Mad Monk 33, which is always nice. We've got Dave Skelly. We've got Lucy Willis. We've got Richard Marsden. We've got Ruth Guthrie. We've got Stephanie there. We've got Dimitar. Dimtiar, I should say. We've got Johnny Copperhead there as well. We've got Gwyneth. We've got loads of people in the chat. This is fantastic. So anyway, the trade deals that are worth, brace yourselves, 0.08% of our GDP over the next 12 years. 12 years. So it amounts to about £2.3 billion a year for the next 12 years. That's what they say it's going to add to our economy. But, this is the first. This is the first of many. There are those who say that the population of Australia, which I think is somewhere around 28 million, the population of New Zealand, which is 4.7 million, the fact that they're like 20,000 miles away, these horrible, annoying little facts that just keep cropping up. It's 10,000 miles, 12,000 miles, I don't know. It's a long bloody way away. It takes a long time to get on a ship. It takes about 6 weeks to get on a ship. You got to go through the Suez Canal, which is really expensive. It's all a bit difficult to trade with these countries, but it's just the first. It's just the first of many. Just because we've got these trade deals, which George Useless, the Brexiteer, George Useless, actually stated in the Commons a few months ago that it was a terrible deal. I think he used the word one-sided, maybe. Or is that two words? It's hyphenated, isn't it? Anyway, the point being, these trade deals were negotiated by Liz Truss. Yeah. Good one. Nice. Liz Truss. Woo! Yeah, she was good at her job, wasn't she? Shortest serving Prime Minister in British history. Yeah, indeed. I will try and catch your show tonight. That's to Reagan Elise. Oh, yes. Reagan Elise and Lee Corn will be doing a show tonight, which I recommend. 0.08% isn't that isn't a benefit. It's a rounding error. The amount of trade that we lost with the EU is 4%. And what we're going to do now is going to talk a little bit about where else we might be able to get a trade deal. A really good trade deal. Now, when we were in the EU, we had a really good trade deal with Japan, which was actually signed in the last couple of years of us being in the EU. But we sacked that off, and we now have an inferior deal with Japan that's been negotiated. I don't think it's kicked in yet, because I think that this deal with Australia and New Zealand are the first of The first of many. So you've got Japan. Now, Japan seems like a good call to have a trade deal with, but we already had a trade deal with the 120 million odd people who live in, they're not all odd, some of them are even, who live in Japan. So that's good. And then we've got Canada, 40 million people live in Canada. You know, that's 2/3 of the population of the United Kingdom, but they've got a lot of resources that they want to sell us. Yeah. Lots of resources, just like the Japanese have got lots of electronic stuff that they want to sell us, and the Australians have got a lot of beef. They've got a lot of beef with the British. They've got a lot of beef they want to sell us, and the New Zealanders have got a lot of sheep that they want to sell us, which is fortunate because Britain doesn't produce beef or lamb. Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. So this has been described as catastrophic for British farmers, but this is just the beginning. We're going to get more trade deals. More trade deals with trade blocs around the world, like TCPTPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which we've got a deal with. I don't think that's been ratified yet either, but eventually we'll have a trade deal with the likes of Brunei, which I think still has a death penalty. Doesn't have alcohol, so I don't know if we're going to sell them any scotch, which is 20% of our food and drink exports. But we Brunei, hey, might be able to get a trade deal with India. Yeah. Because at the moment, talking of whiskey, they put a massive tariff on British whiskey coming over to, especially Scotch whiskey, actually all whiskies, coming over to India. Maybe we could get rid of that tariff. But you do know that the EU was trying to negotiate a deal with India for a long time, a trade deal. This is pre-Modi, I think. This goes back a long way. And it was being held up by the British for two reasons. One, because the British didn't want to allow too many Indians coming over here to our country. Yeah, typical. And the other thing is that the deal didn't include getting rid of these massive tariffs. Well, I think reduced them a little, but not that much on whiskey that they have over there, because they have a little bit of a sort of prohibition thing going on in India. It can sometimes be quite difficult to get a drink in India. A good example of this, and look, I don't know if this is an urban legend or if it's actually true, but it sounds probable. There's an Indian brand of beer called Kingfisher, and because you're not allowed to advertise beer in India, in certain states, they're supposed to be dry states. I know that in at least one state I was in India where they would give you beer in a teapot, and they'll pour it out into a teacup. So if a police person walked past and looked in the window, they would see everyone just supping tea. But it's actually beer. But you weren't allowed to sell beer because of the rules, regulations. Anyway, so Kingfisher weren't allowed to advertise beer because they had a very strict rule about not being able to advertise beer in India. And so what Kingfisher did, they bought an airline, and then they put their Kingfisher logo on the airline and called it Kingfisher Airways. I don't think it exists anymore, but for a while, that was their way of advertising their alcohol. Anyway, so funnily enough, it was the British that were holding up the trade deal between the EU and, other countries might have had a little bit of a hoo-ah about it, but Britain was specifically singled out as holding up this trade deal for the rest of the EU. Great. So the EU already has trade deals in place with the likes of CARICOM in the Caribbean, and Mercosur. It's got quite a good deal with Mercosur, which is the South American trade bloc. Now the thing is, a lot of countries around the world, like ASEAN, Mercosur, CARICOM, ECOWAS, don't know how to pronounce that. That's the Economic Community of West African States. They have something in common. They're not just one country. There are many countries. So the only countries that really, really, really would be great to have a trade deal with are ones that aren't necessarily already in a big trade bloc, and ones that maybe want to buy our stuff. And here's where Brexit falls down. Here's where Brexit has always fallen down. Because, unfortunately, and I've stated this a few times in the last few years, many countries around the world, I'd say about 3/4 of them, so there's about 200 countries in the world, 150 of them can't afford to buy the stuff that we produce. Whether that's physical goods, whether that's services, whether that's financial products, doesn't matter. They can't. The average person in those countries cannot afford to buy the stuff that we are selling them. What's more, most of the people in these places don't even want the stuff that we're selling them It's not necessary. You're growing up in West Africa or the Caribbean. The first thing you need is a roof over your head. Second thing you need is food. Third thing you need is a mobile phone. A cheap mobile phone. 3 things that we do not make in this country for export around the world. That's why China's making great inroads into Africa and has been doing for the last 20 years, actually. But we talk about the Chinese influence in Africa a lot because it's easy to see. But at the same time, the EU or the European countries still invest more time, more energy, and sometimes their military, like in Mali, where the French army was called in Africa, than China does at the moment. I mean, there's competition there, but yeah, it's worth noting. Anyway, the point being is that these trade deals with decent countries that are decent countries, that's a bad way of putting it, countries that are decent to have a trade deal with because they will want to buy our stuff, are very few and far between. I'm going to give you the list. Okay, here we go. So brace yourself. This is going to be a really boring list of countries, okay, around the world that I believe that it's worth having a trade deal with because there's enough people in those countries, a critical mass of people in those countries that can afford and want the stuff that we're selling. Here we go. America. Oh, that's it. Sorry, I meant to say outside of the EU, the countries that it's worth having a trade deal with. Really worth something approaching what our deal was with the EU. I should state that now. There are 3 major major blocks in the world, if you like. There's America, the EU, and there is China. Now, China is doing all right by itself. It really doesn't need, I don't know, luxury handbags, artisan jam, or financial products from the UK. It seems to be getting on all right without them. China is incredibly protectionist. If you try and drive your car into China, good luck with that, because unfortunately, for people who want to drive through China in order to go somewhere else, you've got to pay an income tax. That's the wrong word. Import tax, import duty on your vehicle. I think that equates to the worth of the vehicle, in case you bring it into China and then try and sell it while you're in China. Which would be a bit mad trying to sell a right-hand drive car in China, but you never know. So basically, unless you have the car when you're coming out, then you get the money supposedly back to you, but you're probably a few £100 down by the time you pop out the other side in Laos or Vietnam or wherever you're going on your way to Singapore. Anyway, so what's wrong with Singapore? Singapore's a tiny country. Singapore is a little tiny island state. It's a city. It's a city-state. It's tiny. It's a minnow. But America would definitely be worth getting a trade deal with. But there's the thing. America is possibly even more protectionist than China for very much the same reasons. They want to protect their own. They want to protect their own farmers. They want to protect their own industries. And what's interesting is a lot of these scumbag Brexiteers who lied to everyone and cheated your grandfather fooled your grandfather into basically sacrificing the future happiness of their own grandchildren, which is a bit of a strange thing to do, but there you go. A lot of people did it. 17.4 million, I think. Bloody hell. But yeah, you can't convert them all at once. We're getting there, I'm sure. And judging by the latest polls. But if you have a country like America, which is very self-sufficient, they have it's a massive country. It's the size of Australia, maybe even bigger. It's got all kinds of different places where you can grow crops in the middle. You can have mountains, you've got deserts, you've got everything. And you've got 50 states, which operate kind of like 50 different countries. Almost like the 50 countries of Europe, if they all work together. Kind of. There are 50 countries in Europe, if you're including places like Vatican City and Kosovo, and you count Wales and Scotland as independent states and things like that. It comes to 50. Anyway, as far as I'm concerned. So they don't actually need to have a really good trade deal with the UK. It's just not necessary for them. They're not desperate to have a deal so they can sell us stuff because we're not buying their stuff. And this idea that, like, now we have a trade deal with Australia and New Zealand, oh, wow, we can finally find out what Vegemite tastes like. We can get some Anzac biscuits for the first time ever. I mean, these things are so marginal. It's pathetic. But then you think about America and how much America has infiltrated the British market without a trade deal in place. We have McDonald's, obviously. We have Starbucks, we have KFC, we have Burger King, we have Carl's Jr., we have Microsoft, we have Google, we have TikTok, all these American companies. We have Ford, we have these the car companies, Chrysler. We buy the cars. I mean, there's so much stuff that we buy from America. And that balance of trade isn't ever going to get any better because we're a much smaller country than they are. With the EU, we're fighting pound for pound because we have a comparable economy all put together. I know America's bigger, but it is comparable, a lot more comparable than just Britain on its own, which is about £2 trillion a year GDP compared with America, which is 20. It's like 10 times as big. And we're having that kind of tyrannical power relationship between a very big country like America, a very big, rich country, and the UK means that if we ever did get a deal, say Trump got re-elected, heaven forfend, and he gave us an amazing trade deal, it wouldn't be amazing for us. It would be amazing for America because no one goes into a trade deal wanting to buy things. They go into a trade deal wanting to sell you stuff, except for the UK, because the people in charge of the UK, the elite class in the UK, the elite privately educated class, are idiots. They are possibly inbred. I don't know. They are fools who have been raised up to a point of almost hero worship amongst people who should damn well know better. When people say, "Oh, I really like Nigel Farage," and I'm like, "Really? Really? Why? Why do you like?" Well, he says it like it is. He's one of us. He's not. He's not. He's a millionaire. He was an investment banker in London or an assistant to an investment banker or something. Then he became a career politician. He's taken money from God knows who. Yeah, we know who. Yeah, we know who you're taking money from, Nigel, or you and your horrible crooked mates to destroy the British economy. But they don't know anything about running a business. They don't know anything about trade. They don't know anything. I don't know that much, but I know more than them. And I'm not in a position of power. And I can tell you now that after these deals go through with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, Japan, Singapore, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, that's kind of it. I mean, if we're just talking about advanced economies around the world, there's only about 40 and 30 of them are in Europe. It's really slim pickings. There's not an advanced economy, according to the IMF, in South America, or Central America, or the Caribbean, or Africa. Anywhere in Africa. There's only 4 in the whole of Asia. 4! And not the biggest continent in the world, there's 4. I mean, this is why historically, we should be paying some kind of restitution to these places that we messed up in the past. They never came over here. It's like people came over from Tonga and like burnt down the Tower of London and stole all the paintings out of Buckingham Palace. That never happened. But we did that to them, the equivalent of it. And these countries are still poor, possibly because of us. And we say, no, now we want a trade deal so we can sell you things. And they're like, all right, mate. Yeah, great. Weird. Also, China got really effed over by China. England has a long memory. Just look up the Opium Wars. Yeah, we had 2 wars. 2 Opium Wars against China because they wouldn't sell our smack. Yeah, that's right. We were the world's biggest drug dealers at the time. We had 2 wars and we got Hong Kong out of it. And also we burnt down the Summer Palace. I think it was in Beijing. Was it Beijing where the Summer Palace was? A beautiful Summer Palace that we burnt down. Yeah. Britain did that. Yeah, to make you proud. To make you proud of the past, the empire. Yeah, when we went around dealing drugs, burning down palaces, stealing priceless artifacts. Yeah, great. Good job, England. Good job, Britain. We don't need to convert them, just wait a few years. Well, I wasn't going to say, but you just did. I wouldn't want to drive in China. The last time I was there, they drive on both sides of the road. And yeah, it's got a lot better. It's got a lot better in recent years. I think India, though, it's probably got a bit worse. The point is, and they drive on the left. The point is to destabilize the EU was to keep America hegemony. This was the plan post 9/11. I don't think that was an American plan. I think that was a Russian plan. It was made very clear in a book by Alexander Dugin, who's a far-right Nazi nationalist in Russia, the guy whose daughter got blown up in a car last year because they were trying to blow him up. And he wrote a book in 1997 called The Foundations of Geopolitics, in which he laid out the ways that the the struggling Russia, the post-Soviet era Russia, could get back on its feet. And it was all to do with subterfuge causing ethnic tension in America. And one of the lines just reads out, separate the UK from the rest of Europe. That was one of their plans. And we still don't know where £7 million of Aaron Banks's from Leave.eu's funding came from. It went via the Isle of Man, and because of our arcane electoral law, he doesn't have to declare where it came from. It is just wow. Franco Puni says, go back to the 60s pre-EU. Why did the UK only build 54 V10 airliners? Because the UK was not a big market for transcontinental airliners. Compare that to the US 707, where over 800 were built. Indeed. Well, here's a really good example for you about America. You know, when it comes to us having a bit of an advantage over them, the British and the French in the 60s developed Concorde. The first successful and the only successful passenger jet that could go supersonic, could go Mach 2, twice the speed of sound. And America hated it. America hated it, not because it was too noisy, really. It was because they felt that, a little bit jealous that they hadn't come up with it first. So they put rules in place. They wound people up. They said, "Oh, it's too noisy. It's gonna interfere with all the noise." I mean, anyone who lives under the flight path of Heathrow can tell you how much noise planes make, full stop. But in America, they was like, "Oh yeah, these planes will make too much noise, even when they're 28,000 feet up in the sky." And it was one of those things. It's kind of, if you say so, mate. But that really derailed the whole Concorde project, and it meant that Concorde didn't produce enough Concordes to be profitable ever. And Concorde never made a profit. But it was kind of cool, you could get over to America in like 3 hours or something, but that you weren't allowed to fly over America. You couldn't go from, say, New York to LA, which was the original plan with Concorde, was be able to get from Europe over to California very, very quickly, and to other places around the world. But yeah, it just wasn't to be. But I mean, look, I never got to fly on Concorde. But I'll never will now. But the point remains that if America feels threatened in any way, it snaps back. Have a look at what they're doing at TikTok. TikTok's been banned in the thing. Is it Minnesota? Check me in the comments. Is it Minnesota that's banned Concorde? Yeah. Okay, mate. That's Concorde. Sorry, TikTok. It's banned TikTok. Why? Because it's collecting data. Well, yeah, same as Twitter and Facebook and Google have been doing for years. Yeah. But they're American companies, so that's different. All right, mate. I'm sorry, you got loads of chats to read through. I don't think I'm going to get through them all. If anyone desperately wants me to read something, please put it into a super chat and I'll be able to read it. It only costs a couple of quid. Nick and Diff says, true, I know a few Brexiters who are bereft of life, but I met a couple fairly recently who were very Brexity to the extreme. Mid-60s, will be at least 20 years before they shuttle off. Oh, there you go. Bannon, Roger Stone, Reagan, link is obvious. Indeed. Montana. Sorry, Minnesota. Capital St. Paul's. It was Montana. Yeah. Capital Montpellier? No, I think I'm making that up. Anyway, so yeah, good old Hannah Montana there. Banning TikTok, strangely enough. Concorde was profitable for BA and Air France once they priced it in for the elite. Both of them got the planes pretty much for free. Yeah, well, I guess the British and French taxpayers picked up the bill then. So I don't think it was profitable in the long run. I know what you meant, Lee. I know what you meant. It's all good. So, yeah, at least it's like profitable. One Angry Pagan says, Graham, how do you think Starmer will deal with the growing tensions and conflict in Europe that Russia seems to have facilitated? The honest answer is I don't know. I hope that he stands up for what he stood up for all his life, which is justice and helping people. I mean, don't forget, before he became Director of Public Prosecutions, he worked for Amnesty. He saved people's lives. He literally saved hundreds of people's lives from the death penalty when he worked for Amnesty. And he also represented the McDonald's, the two in the McLeibel trial in the 1990s when Greenpeace, I think it was Greenpeace, protesters were giving out leaflets saying that McDonald's burgers were crap and that they, which they are, and that they were cutting down the rainforest to grow soy to feed their cows or to graze cows or whatever it was, and McDonald's with all the money that McDonald's got took these people to court, and Starmer was one of the young lawyers who actually defended them, and they won. They won their trial. So yeah, I hope he continues in that vein. Obviously, he comes across to me, Starmer, as quite, annoyingly pragmatic. And I'm a bit of an idealist, and I like to think, we could do these amazing things. I think he deals with what's in front of him from any one moment to the other. But I can't see him, for instance, withdrawing support for Ukraine, like what Trump, God forbid, if he becomes president again, will do. He'll definitely do that. It'll be the first thing he does is withdraw support for Ukraine, and also that other creep who's running for the Republican ticket, DeSantis. He hates Ukraine. He loves Russia. He wants everyone the same, and he wants to ban books. He's basically a communist. It's funny how the Republicans vote for these people, isn't it? Anyway, the problem with Concorde is that it could only use 80% of the seats because of a design flaw. Oh, yeah, I mean, if you talk about design flaws, it could have been made better, couldn't it, over time? But there was just no investment after that because they weren't making anything back on the capital, which was provided for by the taxpayers. So we paid for a super fast jet for rich people. Yeah. Can a sex offender run for US office? Yes, great British video game. In fact, you can run for a US office from jail. If you want to be president of the United States, you need to be born in America or an American dependency. You need to be 35, and I think that's it. There's nothing there to say, hey, registered sex offender, you can't be in a position of power over all America's women or children, people that you wouldn't leave your puppy with. That's what I describe Boris Johnson or Nigel Farage with. Would you, if you had a lovely puppy and your daughter loved the little puppy and you needed to go away for the weekend, would you leave your puppy in the care of Boris Johnson? Would you leave your puppy in the care of Trump? No, you wouldn't. Not in a million years. Even if you were the biggest Brexit-loving, Boris Johnson gargling, the trumpet. You wouldn't leave your puppy with them, would you? No, but you would leave your country, yeah? Yeah? The future with them, the future of the entire planet. Absolutely nuts. Russia is falling apart, says Stephanie. Given a hefty push by Ukraine, I think the problem Starmer will face is how to help Ukraine rebuild. I think that it's very, very important that we focus on that once this war is over, getting Ukraine back on its feet. And this is something that the EU is often not lauded for enough, I don't feel. Don't forget, we had the Berlin Wall come down in November 1989, and within just over a decade, we had countries that were former Eastern Bloc countries, or even part of the Soviet Union, like Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, joining the EU. And a big part of that was the EU paying and helping with restoring these places to rebuild them after the state that the Soviets had left them in. And it's been an incredible success story. Look at Poland. Their GDP per capita is set to overtake that of the UK's in 2030. A big part of that's because of Brexit, but another big part of it is because Poland was helped out by the EU, that it joined the EU, and now it's doing really well for itself, thank you very much. You can say the same about Romania and Bulgaria. I mean, these countries really were down at heel just a few years ago. And don't forget Spain. When I was born in 1979, Spain was a third world country. And that sounds mad to say now. They've got some of the best high-speed rail in the entire continent. But they struggled as well. In 1985, they joined the EU and things started turning around for Spain. Also, the dictator died. Murray, I think Braverman prefer to eat cockroaches. They're better off than UK, says Richard. Yeah, absolutely. So I've come there to the end of time, and I'm just talking about these trade deals with with New Zealand and Australia. And all my love to New Zealand and Australia. I think they're great countries, but these are lopsided trade deals that mean that any tariffs on the stuff coming into our country is knocked off, so we don't protect our farmers in the way that we used to. We don't protect our industry in the way that we used to when we were part of the EU. And one of the things that wound me up with Brexiteers is they'll often refer to the EU as a protectionist club. It's the protectionism that we don't like the protectionism. And it's like, they're protecting us. Why would they do? They're literally protecting us from other countries undercutting us in what we sell, because we have a minimum wage. We have a cost of living that is set and we can't do anything about it. I mean, it changes, but it only goes up, doesn't it? We can't live on a couple of dollars a day. In other countries, you can, I say live, I say survive. You can't survive off a couple, despite what 30p Lee Anderson thinks. It's impossible in this country to have accommodation and food in your belly and be able to go out and get a job on that kind of income. And that's why even the dole is not £10 a week. Do you know what I mean? Or £14 a week. And this is why we can't make things as cheap as they are made in China. We don't have resources like they do in Africa. Think about, we don't have any gold. It was all taken by the Romans. We got copper, got bugger all of that left. We've got hardly any tin. All the tin mines closed down. Our coal is very difficult to get to. It's split steam coal. So it's a lot easier to get it out of the ground in places like Australia and Argentina. And I don't really want to be exporting coal around the world because it's destroying the planet, toxifying the air and warming everything up. So yeah, there's a good few things here why we are starting off on the back foot if we're going to try and trade with countries all around the world. And the biggest problem that we've got is that unless we can somehow come up with a very clever way in the next 2 years of making the 54 countries of Africa a lot freaking richer than they currently are, because now, if you get your calculator out, have a look at the GDP in each country in Africa, tot it all up, press enter, it comes out to about the same as the GDP of France. France, not the EU, not America, France, just France. That's all the oil in Angola. That's all the gold in Botswana. That's do they have gold in Botswana? Let's say South Africa. That's all the oil in Libya put together. Gross domestic product of the entire continent of Africa. It's massive, massive continent of 54 countries. GDP of France, a couple of miles away. But we don't want to trade with France anymore. I had a very exasperated conversation with Kieran, the van driver, on Tuesday night. We've been knocked back from going over to France. He was taking back empties, like literally empty cartons, empty trays for the Eurostar. It wasn't a business transfer. It was literally they've got too many of them in St Pancras. They've got no space on the train to take them to France, so they get taken separately to France, if you can believe this, in a van, and then they're used to come back, into the UK. So that's the way it works, and people are paying hundreds of pounds for a ticket on the Eurostar, and I presume on yesterday morning, they didn't have anything to eat things off because Kieran was knocked back at the border by the French security, French customs, who said, "See all that empty plastic there, that's worth 500 quid, that is. And if it's worth over 450 quid, you've got to declare it as a business expense." You never had to do this. You have to get goods forms and get a freight forwarder and a customs agent and all this kind of stuff involved. Yeah, 500 quid's worth of plastic. And that was just a guess by the customs officer. He didn't know. He just, that looks about 500 quid. I don't think he was a quantity surveyor in a previous employment. And this is the country that we asked for. This is the country that we bargained for. This is the country that we bled for in the Brexit wars. These people going out and walking from Sunderland all the way to London to make Brexit happen, make Brexit work. And to go back to Starmer, the idea that he can make Brexit work, I mean, good luck with that, mate. Honestly, it's like getting a corpse, digging it up, and shocking electricity through it, and thinking you're going to bring it back to life. I'm going to make it work. No, this person's been dead for 200 years. Dr. Frankenstein, what are you talking about? Absolute loon. Surely no more trade deals between now and the general election, says Nick and Diff with £2 super chat. Thank you very much, Nick. There might be some trade deals struck, but they won't be ratified. So what happened today was the trade deal, it has to be struck, then it has to be agreed on, then it has to be ratified by the respective parliaments of each country, or the administrations of each country, and then finally it's got to be, they have a date when it starts. So the start of this date, for whatever reason, was May the 31st. I assume that's because it's already almost... it's already almost June the 1st in Australia and New Zealand because they're 12 hours ahead of us. Almost, not quite there yet. Where's G? Companies like SVES make in the tune of 10 billion in profit from waste management, and they lobby your council tax up. Yeah, doesn't surprise me at all. So a few other things that I want to talk about today. I want to talk about AI and the fact that people are going, AI is going to destroy the world. But they're not. They're saying it's not going to destroy the world at the moment, but in the future it could be used for nefarious purposes. And we need to nip that in the bud. We need to have worldwide regulations on it, which is sensible. But obviously the newspapers have gone with, oh my God, we're going to be killed by the AI robots, because they're hysterical lunatics from Carry On movies. I don't think newspapers have been written by humans for a long time, just AI bots, hysterical AI bots. I don't like the word hysterical because obviously it's got a gendered meaning, but yeah, basically just going a little bit too far. They say melodramatic tabloid bots. And no wonder they're scared, because obviously these newspapers could be written by AI and no one would notice, because they're so simplistically written. I want to talk a little bit about that, and I wasn't going to talk about Philip Schofield because, oh my God, that's been done to death. But yeah, there were a few things in the news that are kind of newsworthy, but I just felt like it would be important this morning to just have a little bit of a deep dive, shallow dive, a little bit of a dive into the whole world of international peace trade agreements, which... oh man, it's slim pickings. It really is. And there's one way that we can improve our economy overnight, and Jeremy Hunt has admitted to this, and that's to rejoin the single market, which essentially is halfway to rejoining the EU, which is something that we're going to have to do at some point. And it's painful that we have to wait for this inevitable thing to happen in the future, and so many lives are going to be ruined and have been ruined already by Brexit. And I just want to get to the point where I can go on TV and I can say, listen, everyone who voted for Brexit, right? I want you to pick up the phone, right? And apologise. Just call up your son or your daughter, call up your grandkids and apologise. That's what I want you to do, each and every one of you. Because I'm not James O'Brien. He's got sympathy for the conned, and I don't have sympathy. There's an old saying, this is from Press Gang, don't put your head in the mouth of a crocodile. And those that do, it's very unfortunate because they die. But at the same time, very stupid because they were warned. Don't put your head in the jaws of a crocodile. So I'll just say thank you so much to everyone who's stuck with us. And in the chat there, AI cannot be controlled, says number 3. That might be an AI bot saying that. Is that really you, Richard? Let me know in the chat. The bonds are hacky from walking in the clarts. I can't do that. The rich cannot be controlled either. That's very true, Clive. That is very true. We need new laws for unicorns. Unicorns are dangerous. All leads to UBI, says Nom. They will have there'll be a choice in the near future. The creativity of a nation or the GDP of a nation. Yeah, well, GDP is not all it's cracked up to be, obviously. But it does mean that people can buy stuff from other countries that they couldn't otherwise buy if the GDP is not above a certain level per capita. And unfortunately, for lots of these countries in Africa and Asia and the Americas and the Caribbean and the Pacific Islands, what can I say? The GDP per capita doesn't reach the threshold of them being able to buy our stuff. And that is the fatal flaw of Brexit and why it could never work and why it will never work. But don't expect the Brexiteers to agree with us for a little while yet. Although the tide is turning. A recent survey showed that only 9% of people thought that Brexit was going well. 9%, which sort of signifies that 91% either don't know or don't think it's going very well at all. So there's that. It's not going to get any better anytime soon. If you want to join me over on the Discord server, I will be over there presently. I've got a couple more patrons. Thank you very much to my new patrons. I'll give you access to the to the Discord. We're going to go over there now for a James O'Brien listen along. So if you'd like to join us on the Discord chat, please head over there now. If you're not on the Discord chat and you'd like to be, you can either become a YouTube member or a patron. Sign up and I'll send you a link and you can join us over there. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about AI in between whatever James is rabbiting on about. So I'll be back. No, I won't. Phil will be here tomorrow because there's no Prime Minister's questions today. Phil will be here tomorrow. at 9:30 for another morning brew. In the meantime, I'll say thank you so much for watching. Thanks for all the comments and the super chats and the all the YouTube members and the patrons out there. You are all awesome. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. And until next time, I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.